Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Education Talks again. I got a very special guest today, all the way from Australia. He's none other than our dear friend Nick Anthony. Nick Anthony now lives in Spain. Also, sometimes he actually lives in Thailand, also in Pokhara, Nepal right now. So he's been arrived in Nepal today, and I've got some very interesting topic that I'll be discussing with him. So he's a very passionate person, passionate about humankind and art and the environment, and he's always been fighting against the pollution, and he's been running the campaigns individually, or he's been collaborating with the different forms in society, and including the government form. He recently, currently he is working with the government in India to clean the riverside there, and they've been working together to really just clear and clean the environment so that the people on this planet will have a great future. So today, without any further ado, I've got some questions. Before I do that, let's welcome Nick Anthony here. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure having you together with you.
And likewise, nice to be here in Pokhara again. It's like my second home or third home. I've been coming here for a few years, so I've been seeing the changes, and as always, such a beautiful place.
All right.
Such beautiful people.
Okay.
And the mountains, particularly the Annapurnas, have a very special place in my heart.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for your kind words.
And if you haven't been to Pokhara and the Annapurnas, you must come and visit.
All right. Okay, Nick, my first question for you is, you're very passionate. I know you're very, very worried about people and the environment, very special, and you're very grounded to the nature, and you're very connected with the nature. That's what I am very connected with you about. So my first question for you is, what exactly inspired you first that you wanted to become, you became so passionate about environmental issues?
I'm very lucky. I grew up as a young kid in North Wales. And in North Wales, there's a mountain called Snowdonia. It's a little bit like a mini Annapurnas.
Yes.
It's rugged, it's tough, it's wild, it's wet, it's cold, it's miserable sometimes. And my father was a doctor, and we lived up in this region called Snowdonia. So from the age of 2 years old, I've been up and down mountains, I've lived in mountains, so it's always been a part of my spirit. I moved to Australia when I was 7 or 8. And of course, Australia with the great outdoors and the mountains and the beaches, and it has such amazing diversity. As a kid growing up, it's like a magical playground. Through that period, by the time I was 15, I was already determined to be an outdoor person. That was going to be my life, not necessarily my career, but that was my chosen lifestyle. And really, since 15, I've been in the mountains most of my life. I've been pulled and pushed in a few different directions, as we all are in this journey of life. But I had a very deep, grounded understanding of nature, the necessity for nature for life on Earth.
Yes.
And of course, growing up in just one generation, the world has changed so much. And what our parents saw and felt and how they lived and how they did things is already very different to how we are able to live today if we're to keep the capacity of what the planet is, natural resources, people, requirements for all these different things. Obviously, we have to somehow create a balance. And I've seen for the last 20 years, the world go past this balance into a decline. And if it continues to decline, then of course our own humanity is potentially doomed, and we're in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, I'm an optimist. I'm not a blind optimist, but I do have a very positive spirit. And I do believe that for most of the problems today, there are solutions at hand today. Now, we know that systems take time to change. Government policy takes time to change. Education systems take time to change. Social systems take time to modernize and adapt and to provide equality and to provide fair access and to provide fair access to information. And then you have, particularly in this part of the world and in India, where I've been working a lot for the last 8 years, you have a massive poverty gap, and that accentuates some of these issues.
Yes.
It might be okay for most of us to say, fine, we can buy ourselves our soaps as a bar.
Yes.
But actually, when you have no money and you need to buy a soap, you end up being able to only afford a small soap bar.
Okay.
Now, that one unfortunately comes with a wrapper.
Yeah.
And so there comes that start of that evolution of pollution,
Yes.
where one little soap bar becomes 50 items a day, which becomes 15,000 quickly. And, you know, it is a massive stuff from just one person making one decision. So this whole balance of nature comes back generally to our own individual choices and the decisions that we make, how we live, where we live, what we do, right way, right job, right income, and providing a life of service and dedication to also Mother Nature, for which we all survive on and need to provide for, as well as she provides for us. So it's been a journey. It did start initially in Thailand with plastic on the beaches, was really the panacea, was the big problem. And so we worked with the island of Phuket and the community and the government, and we started building a program. It ended up running up to about 5,000 people each time for doing beach cleaning.
Yes.
And through that process, the government got on top of it. And actually now for the last 10 years, Phuket's beaches in particular have been really well maintained and are much better than they used to be. And that was an evolution. Like all problems, if you're going to make a change, you're going to make an adaptation to it, you have a couple of choices. Either you can do it individually, which as education and educated people, we can make that choice. If the government's going to change it, it goes through a system of policy changes, and it gets discussed with industry and the big conglomerates who are providing these products. And that process is an evolution of change, but as we've seen, generally it's quite slow.
Yeah.
That process can be speeded up. In Mumbai in 2015, they found themselves in a situation where they had 250 acres of landfill that had been built up since 1948. And they had too much garbage per day and the landfills are full. So you've got a crisis situation. It's fine to take all this garbage. So, okay, I'm a good recycler. I put my plastics into the yellow bin. Right, good job for me. You know, that's my job done. Well, government doesn't have the capacity to handle it. So they either have to ship it off the island or they have to change their policy to reduce it. And that was the situation where Mumbai was in a crisis. And very quickly, within 3 months, they changed their entire policy.
Wow.
They became one of the leading plastic policy places in the world. They did it literally overnight. They hired 5,000 people to clean the city, to go around and to educate people, and which I have to say I've seen in Kathmandu recently. So that's a really beautiful thing, and I'll talk more about that positive change in a minute.
Sure.
And then from Mumbai, of course, the process was, well, as a retailer, now I have these plastic coffee cups. I want to change to something else. What do I change to?
Yes.
And the government brought 250 organizations together that are selling alternative materials that are organic, bioorganic, compostable, etc. And they provided them with the options. Now, of course, that was very early days, 2015, and the price points were not quite the same. But now, 8 years later, we're getting close to price parity with plastics. Yes. And with the reduction and the education that we all have, things are changing. So big changes possible, big programs, big visions, and big dreams. And perhaps we can talk more about a dream for Nepal.
Sure. So, well, I mean, it's so interesting to actually hear all the stories, and I really appreciate that, and I thank you for working for this planet, Nick.
Thank you.
But my question again, as I started, what really inspired you the first, and then, it's really hard sometimes, many times actually, because every single people, like person, they know how to handle and they know what's going to be polluted, okay? And the governments are working, they got money, and they really are, they talk about that. It's been a very popular topic. But also, it seems like they're not able to control the pollution, and the global warming is really high, and then there's been a lot of disaster going in so many areas in the world. So, and as somebody like an individual, you started with one army. Okay, and you still keep going on. So my question is, what really keeps you going? You dreamed about it, you worked, but still, I'm sure you need some motivation. What really keeps you motivated when you're doing this?
I think my biggest motivation is the fact that I believe since day one that solutions are at hand today. and with full mobilization of everybody believing the same thing and having the same respect for nature,
Yeah.
the same love and care for nature,
Okay.
to make peace with nature.
Okay.
I think if we can all learn to make peace with nature, then the process becomes much easier on the planet.
Wow.
So the solution is at hand.
All right.
And so I think that's what's driven me for certainly the last dozen years, and following this with the passion that I've been required to do, is that it's possible.
All right. Let's talk about plastic bags. Do you think the government or the country, they should ban the plastic bags, the use of plastic bag?
Plastic bags, in and of themselves, if properly maintained and managed, utilized, and kept out of the environment, have a use and will continue to have a use in society. So it's going to be very unlikely to completely eradicate plastic bags, nor is it necessarily.
Maybe is there any kind of alternative use of plastic bag, like a paper bags or something like that?
But in most countries in the world, we have an energy crisis.
Yes.
If you look at, for example, the Indian numbers, the way people spend their money, the highest expenditure for most Indian households is their energy bills.
Yeah.
Now, energy is also subsidized globally. Oil prices are subsidized globally. So we're living in an area where energy costs are amongst the highest they've ever been. At a time when, with inflation, the amount of money people spend on energy is higher than they've ever spent. Yet, plastic being made from oil is being thrown away. So single-use oil is not making any sense. So that just in and of itself is I guess a breakaway from the direction that we need to do to respect Mother Nature and to make peace with nature.
Yes.
So in every action, you can ask yourself, is what I'm doing making peace with nature? If getting a plastic bag made from oil, using it one time and throwing it in the bin, it doesn't.
Maybe I think, what if they really try to, I mean, the business owners, let's say, if they try to really just come up with the sole idea that it's not only one-time use, but also they can use for, reusable, something like that. Is that
correct? There is, which means then they ban, like they did in Mumbai, the thinnest plastic bags, so that there is a reusability to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sensible to be able to bring your own bags, to be able to, naturally reduce your packaging and reduce your waste in general.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start living with an audit of what you do and holding yourself accountable, this is not about me, but let's say with you in your house, what do you do with your composting? What do you do with your plastics? What are you doing with your papers? Are you doing proper segregation? Is there a place for you to take your batteries? Now, through that process, every question should be, am I making peace with nature? So if I throw my batteries in a bin that goes into the community waste program, then I'm producing a hazardous material and what otherwise could be potentially maybe not recycled, but downcycled, which is a terminology. So it comes down to individual questions.
Mr. Naik, what I've seen also, I've seen and I've heard, many governments in the world, they've governments in the business industries and even the business owners, they've banned the plastic bags completely. They've said, they've even got on the slogan, say no to plastic bags. And then they ran that campaign. They really just, use those kind of policies, but they failed, and also there are people busy and they have to get their stuffs done, and they don't know, they know that it's going to be polluted, it's bad for the planet, but still, there's no other alternative solution. So what is your advice for on this kind of situation?
Well, there are alternative situations. As I said before, partially cost is the issue.
Yes.
Where if you were to provide bags made of tapioca or bags made of hemp or whatever, of course they're more expensive. But they're reusable. So that becomes an education program.
We're talking about the governments and the organizations fail in those policies when they say no to the plastic bag. So what is your piece of advice? What is your motivation so far for those who failed and who are looking for alternative solutions on that?
I think firstly it's a journey.
Yes.
So the end game, we know what it is, and it's a long process getting there. So I don't consider failure per se, more often part of the process.
Okay.
And of course here in Nepal is no different. 2015, you had your first plastic bag policy and strategy change and ban. It was really actually well received internationally and was applauded internationally in 2015, which was around the same time as Mumbai was changing its policy.
Yes.
And so there was this real strength of possibility and hope that this was the opportunity for the Himalayas with India and Nepal to properly clean up and to be able to take care of their problem. Unfortunately, here with the earthquake, changed things again. With COVID, again, disrupted strategies globally. So the situation here in Nepal is not so different to many other places. Now, what I've been wonderfully encouraged by this particular trip is the changes in Kathmandu to the amount of pollution that's evident and is on the streets. The mayor of Kathmandu has really done a very good job at initiating that system and building a program now where the streets are much better.
Yes.
And household garbage is starting to be segregated and separated.
Talking about the policy, say no for plastic bags. A lot of governments and a lot of organizations, they really started this, but they've really fallen. I've seen that. And what is your piece of advice for them? And what is your wisdom that that they can apply that they will not really fail?
I think the first thing is that it's an extremely complex problem. There's a myriad of products, there's a myriad of chemicals, there's a myriad of processes, there's a myriad of labels.
Yes.
So across the entire plastic universe,
yes,
it's been a shambles.
Yes.
Until, I have to say, fairly recently, the last 3 or 4 years, when for the first time scientists, governments, agencies, policymakers, the EU, America, UN, everybody is onto now what are the issues with plastics, what are the issues with microplastics, of course, when they break down and they become a microscopic level. And we now know that that's coming into human placentas, it's coming into our blood. We now know that generally in modern life in a city, you consume about 1 credit card of plastic a week in microplastics, and that includes through the air and through the food and through the water. So it's going to get to a point where, and possibly already is, where it's impacting us as people. It's increasing cancers, it's creating sterility issues, which is going to reduce birth rates in the future. So it's becoming from a very complex problem to solve to now being a very complex, not just environmental, but human health issue.
Yeah.
So when governments come and go with policies such as we saw here in Nepal in 2015 with the introduction of the plastic bag ban, which we all hoped would be the first part of a very broad plastic policy change, through earthquake, of which I was here at the time in Panchase in 2015. It's my first trip back since that earthquake. At that point, I did earthquake relief for 3 months up in Gorkha.
Wow.
And, we could see already that increase in plastics and, it happened and there was very little you could do about it. Since then, with COVID, the world in many places took a step back with its plastic policies. So I don't see it as a failure in a sense. I do see it as part of the process and the journey of education and inclusion of all of the different sectors. It's not just the government that makes a policy and says, right, you do this, and it has to be done with industry, with commerce, with retailers, with the public, done in a way that benefits society. And we're seeing increased policy actions to push it from top down. And we're seeing, like in Kathmandu and here in Pokhara, a real drive for a clean city and for clean streets and clean rivers and a clean lake. So we have seen a real change in mentality, at least initially around the cleanliness of our earth. The next step is to take that, and with every decision, like we said before, think of it and frame it in the conversation of how can we as an individual make peace with nature.
That's right.
And so that comes down to, you're going to buy your coffee and it's in a plastic packaging or it's in something else. There's something else. If it's reusable, fantastic, it's better.
Yeah.
So you start to make individual choices, individual decisions, which has a massive impact at a global level on the reduction in plastic pollution. So it does come down to individual decisions.
That's right.
But we need the support from the government.
Yeah. Do you think the governments, yeah, I mean, I like your word. I mean, you're a very positive and very optimistic person that I can feel even now, even more. So, do you think that, a lot of people, I mean, they know again, like it comes with the obligation, they got no time to think about that. They just do it what they are into. So, do you think there should be any law or kind of this should be something like a law into law enforcement about about people getting banned to use those plastic bags and all those?
Very much. I mean, that's part of the policy change. So, for example, in
Do you think
Mumbai,
that it should be written, like it should be part of the law, and the government should really control them all?
yeah, with education, as in all aspects of education, there's a carrot and there's a stick.
Yeah.
We give you incentive to do it some way.
Yeah.
Actually, the incentive is we have a beautiful planet and the earth is in stronger shape and is
But
able
it's going to
to
be hard for people. I mean, like the business owners who are actually owning the factories, and their business will die. I mean, once we start using those plastics.
businesses change. So they need to adapt and they need to find new ways to use their products if they want to use them.
Yeah.
Or they need to ensure that their products are responsibly used.
Okay.
And that responsible use may be a take-back policy.
Okay.
Such as, beer bottles, as in the old days, or glass bottles. They would have a deposit on it. What about if every single bottle and every single can and every single plastic packaging here in Nepal, let's say it had a deposit?
Yeah.
So you find a beer bottle in the street, it's got a 2 rupee deposit. There's an incentive to bring it back and have it collected by the beer company, and they are responsible for ensuring that glass gets reused and reused in an environmentally friendly way. One of the problems and one of the myths with plastic is that plastic is recyclable. Mm-hmm. And there are multiple uses for plastics. I'm not denying that. You can, for example, put it into the roads, into the bitumen, and the road lasts longer.
Yes.
But what happens when the road does start to wear down is that you create a microplastic stream that goes into the environment. And if you're building roads up in the Himalayas, for example, that's made from plastics,
yes,
you're creating a plastic stream.
Yes.
So every action has a reaction.
That's right.
And with plastics, the myth is that they can be recycled, when in fact they can sometimes be reformed into something else. But if it has a microplastic and a downstream chemical pollution problem, you're creating another problem.
Yes.
So it's nice to say, I take these plastics and I make a plastic t-shirt with a nice big environmental logo on it.
Yeah.
And then every time you put it in the washing machine, it leaches fibers and will do for its entire life.
Yeah.
That's not the smartest way to use plastics. So in my experience, this is really the panacea and the question I get asked all the time. So what do I do with my plastics?
Yeah.
And so far, I'm being really honest, there are very few things that impress me on how to reuse plastics. So it really is a problematic substance when it comes to containing it, mitigating it, and recycling it and reusing it, because it's not an efficient product. And there are so many different types of chemicals and compounds, and so it's a complex problem.
All right. So let's talk about back in Australia. So how is it like in Australia about those, use of plastic bags and those bags?
Australia has been very slow in its waste management policies. Yeah. It's a full consumerist society. There has been little pressure from the government. There's been little policy change from the government. Australia has been a very weak global player when it comes to waste. There's very little effort to mitigate waste. It's still a society of buy, more, and until that changes, the waste will continue to increase. And without that efficiency in the system, it's a throwaway society, unfortunately.
Okay, the new government's been there after 10 years. The new party, they've been in the government now, right? So wow. So okay, let's talk about Thailand. Your company, the Civic Society.
Yes.
You founded back in 2010.
Yes.
So what exactly you are doing with that company right now in Thailand? So, and then is it growing so fast? And how many people have joined you so far as part of a team?
SIC has been running since 2010 or 2011, okay. Just over 10 years. It's an organization that's principally advised local government and
Okay.
provided a roadmap for sustainability planning for the
Yes.
government. And then many of the programs that we have developed within SEEK have been integrated into government programs.
Wow.
So it's been a very positive and a very enjoyable working relationship and friendship. We've really been blessed with the support of a number of great leaders in Phuket that have continued as the challenge came to take on that challenge and accelerate the challenge.
So if the youngsters from Thailand, if they want to they love nature and if they want to be part of SEEK, part of our dear friend Nick's company, so they can register for that. Is that open for everyone?
So right now we are doing an update from our first report in
Okay.
2012. We're doing a 10-year
Okay.
10-year update, which will be presented to the government.
Okay.
That's being written with the international school and the students in Phuket.
Okay.
This year also we've initiated 2 projects in Thailand called A Big Octopus,
Okay.
which is a community center.
Yes.
One on Phuket and one on the way to Bangkok, actually on a fishing village island, an indigenous island, where all the waste goes to and it doesn't come out, a little bit like the Himalayas. Same issue with that problem with garbage. And we're creating a community center to teach basic recycling, segregation, composting, how to grow your vegetables, how to do basic skills. It's going to be an AV center where they can physically record the skills and share the skills. And it's a center which the government can utilize to bring students and to educate their community. So it's a full community first approach. And in recognition that often it's quite hard for the government or the UN to go to any place and localize the program, this is what we're trying to do with these first 2 community
Wow.
centers. So I'm interested to do a community center here in Pokhara.
Okay.
I've been studying the Annapurnas. I've been studying this week Muktinath and down to Beni and this northern part of Pokhara. And I've also spent quite a bit of time up in Panchase Mountain, Makanpur, and looking at the issue with the villages on what are their problems. So I'm very looking forward this next few weeks to continue the conversation here in Pokhara, to look for solutions for the local government, see how we can provide some support, and to continue to clean the planet and to continue to make peace with nature. So it comes down to our individual actions, our individual choices, and just think about it. Every time you do something, you buy something, you need something, do you really need it? Do you really want it?
Yeah.
It comes back to you really need it. And the answer is no, then another decision made. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Argo, if you could, by the way, the United Nations right now is actually running a campaign about make the planet green planet, or some slogan is there. I mean, are you aware about that?
I do work with the UN on a few different levels. In particular, I'm on a committee regarding education for sustainable development, ESD as they call it now. And this is a program that the UN is aiming to implement in every school around the world. It's been 3 years in the making. The white paper is due early next year, and they should be ready for implementation next year. So I've been working with various governments and ministries and working with UN specifically on the ESD program, because education is really the principle of all of the change. Without knowledge, without creation, without conversation, you're not aware of these problems.
Yeah.
And so the critical juncture, of course, is the young community, where they don't have a political voice, they generally don't have a voice in society, and so they're reliant on an education system that's often pre-SDG and not discussing climate change or the climate crisis. And so ESD from the UN will be a way to implement education in every school at every level. So it's a highly commendable program, and I just hope that it continues to accelerate rather than take longer to implement. And that's an opportunity for places like Nepal to put their hand up and say, we would love to do SD in every school and, really be a champion and be a pioneer.
Yeah.
So Nepal, you have an opportunity with ESD.
Wow. Thank you for reminding me about that. I was
Great.
just quite, I knew a little bit about that, but I was not so deep into it. So yeah, and I feel that this is going to be an example, for the entire world, I mean, when United Nations is organizing this and Nepal is representing, and Nepal is in
It has an opportunity.
example. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got the opportunity.
Yeah.
So wow, thank you for actually reminding me that again. And so, what's your plan after? I mean, like you are you're very interested in working with the Nepali government and local government and the organizations to help Nepal to really have a great environment. So, is there any other plan ahead of Nepal? I mean, you're right now working with India, so.
I would like to support Pokera and its development and of making peace with nature.
Okay.
I will be back here in November,
Wow.
and then again in March or April next year. So I'm planning a couple of trips, and we'll keep the conversation and keep the momentum going.
Sure, Nick. It's lovely to have you and have
Thank
a
you so much.
conversation and
Thank
hear
you.
your mind. A very brilliant mind and very lovely mind. So thank you very much once again. So all right, thank you everyone for watching us today. And next time again in another episode, I believe that we'll come up with some great, great work and great stories that we've done about what we've talked today. Thank you for watching. Keep watching Beyond Education and Immigration Services. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much.